All right. Next question.
Next question. Jocko, has there been a situation in which you took something too personally? How do you avoid taking things personally?
So the initial reaction is like, no, man, I don't take things too personally. No, I keep. But the actual fact is, yeah, I take everything personally, right? Like, I mean, if I do something bad, I am very personally, I don't like it at all. If I do something poorly, I don't like it at all. I take it very personally. If somebody gives me feedback, I take it personally. This is like, it's an ego thing. It's a pure ego thing, right? And I just had to say this at a group I was talking to. Just because I say ego is bad all the time, ego is good too. Ego is what drives you. Ego is what makes you want to be number one. Yeah. Ego is what brings you pride in your work and makes you work harder to deliver good product and be a good leader and a good employee and a good person, right? That's ego. The problem comes when ego or taking things personally actually prevents you from listening to the critiques that you're being told. That's the problem. So, for instance, we'll take this little podcast right here. I just got some critique on it the other day. Yeah. I got somebody sent me a little critique, and they said that I didn't explain, because we had Andy Stumpf on here, and Andy was kind of rattling off that his career in the teams. And as he was rattling off the career in the teams, he lost some people. Not a bunch, because it wasn't that complicated, but he lost some people. And for instance, he used an acronym LPO, which stands for Leading Petty Officer, which is the second senior enlisted person in a SEAL platoon, and I didn't explain that when he said it. So there's an example. So when I heard this, my first reaction is like, oh, you don't know what LPO is? Cool. Go Google it. Go Google it. Why are you asking me? Stop talking. And then that was pretty much, my ego was saying, hey, I can't believe this person doesn't even know.
How dare you?
How dare you? And then as I thought about it, I was like, well, I need to make sure in the future that I'm more aware of what guys are talking, especially when I'm sitting here talking to another SEAL who we have a common language, and we are talking about things in a very conversational mode. So we're not caring about anybody else. And that's sort of what the podcast is often, is like, we're not talking to everyone that's listening at this moment. We're just kind of talking to ourselves or amongst ourselves. And so when he throws out these words, I need to be more aware of them. So if I took it personally, I might not listen. If I actually listen, I can do a better job. So that's kind of it. And basically that's the same with anybody. When anybody receives any criticism of any kind, they take it personally. And I think the thing is, two things. Number one, get over it so you can listen to what the criticism is. And also remember this. This is kind of weird. I think, maybe I'm wrong. What do you think? The more angry and the more personally you take some criticism, the truer it actually is. Is that possible? When something really bothers you, it's probably something that really bothers you because you know it's true. Yeah. Like when somebody says something that just doesn't matter to me, it's, I don't take it personally. Oh yeah, they just think that. Don't worry about it. I'm not worried about it. But when somebody says something that I know is true and they're pinging me on it, that means I get even more, take it more personally and get more angry about it. And then that should be an indicator. Hey, this is something you actually need to fix.
Yeah, it actually has to do with insecurity more than anything. So it can be super true, or it can be kind of true, or you can just be questioning whether or not it's true. If you're insecure about it, that's when it's gonna affect. Because you can be like, there can be, okay, let's say guys have a receding hairline, and they're like, oh, I don't care about that at all. It's totally true, or let's say I do care about it. I don't like it, but I've known it for the last 20 years, whatever. And someone's like, hey, your hairline's receding.
Do people still care about that?
I don't think they do. No, anymore. I don't know of any, but I'm just saying, certain things that's, and if you know about it, or and it's true, then see, you won't necessarily be bothered by it. But if you get someone who's like, it's starting to recede, or it's early on, or it's like, dang, and they won't necessarily be. This is just an example, hypothetical, but they won't necessarily be concerned about the actual hairline receding. They're more concerned about, do I look old, or am I unattractive now, or am I losing it now, or something like that. That's what they're insecure about. So when someone points out some symptom of that insecurity, that's when they're like, well, you don't got to say that, or, you know, they get all mad. That goes for kind of anything. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it's someone saying, hey, you didn't explain this enough. Maybe you're like, wait, what are you saying? Was that a junk episode kind of thing, or something like, did I not, you know how you're good at explaining stuff and simplifying them or whatever. Maybe it was like an attack on that or something.
Maybe it's a personal point of pride.
Yeah, you know, exactly. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, but maybe. But that's typically what people get mad about. It's not necessarily if they know it's true or not. It's if they're insecure about it.
Right. Well, you wouldn't be insecure about something that wasn't true.
No, but here's the thing. But sometimes you do. Because, you know, and sometimes it's like a weird, like, mental, like, problem. But, you know, girls, for example, I'm not saying all girls, but I'm going to totally generalize right now. But, you know, the girl who's like, hey, do I look fat in this? The girl's, like, in awesome shape or whatever. And you're like, or they always think they're fat. It's not true.
That's not the right response, by the way. That little wishy-washy thing, that's not a good response.
That's a perfect example, though. You know what I mean? So
don't do that.
It's like that kind of stuff. You know, people are just insecure about stuff sometimes.
Oh, and even though the girl's in really good shape.
Yeah.
You know, that's horrible.
Or even guys, especially like if they're into like their physique or something like that, where I don't know, they're at a party or so. I've heard guys like they go to parties and they'll do like dips or push-ups before they walk in. Yeah, because so they're like more pumped. I swear. And
is that why you were doing some push-ups?
You know what I mean? So like, you
were just a little insecure about what I just said.
No, I didn't. Anyway, you know, they'll get that kind where they'll be like, they'll think that, I'm not looking very cut up or something that. You know, like that kind of stuff when it's not true.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. And I think the bottom line is when we take things personally, I think it's actually not a negative thing because it means that there's probably something that you need to work on. But I think what we need to watch out for is taking it personally and therefore being mad and either being mad at the person that told you, which the person probably could be out of line, you know, saying some stuff that's offensive. But even if someone offends you, well, okay, well, let's fix it so you don't have that weakness or that insecurity anymore. And so just know what your red flags are. Know when you're taking something. Everybody takes stuff personally. Yeah. I'm like Mr. Detachment, and I take stuff personally all the time when somebody says something to me. I'm like, oh, okay. Dang, what do I do to do better? Yeah,
you do a good job of seeing the big picture, though. You know, like, because a lot of times, you know, when I don't know, I always think back to the relationship. Like, okay, let's say I'm at home, I'm mowing the lawn, I you know, did all these great housework chores, whatever. Right. You know, dad comes home, mom comes home, and they're like, hey, I thought I told you to take out the trash. Meanwhile, everything else is spick and span. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I'm mad. You know, how dare you say that to me when I did this, me, my thing. But at the same time, they're right. Mm-hmm. You know, so you do a good job of like, you'd be able to kind of recognize that. Even though you'd probably feel those same feelings, yes. You won't, your default isn't, what about this? And fight back and make the problem bigger. It's kind of like, you'll feel it on the inside.
And recognize the red flags of what's happening. And go, like, okay, cool. I
gotta remember to take out the trash, because the truth is, that's correct.
That is
correct.
You do.
It doesn't matter if you did the lawn or not. The trash was a thing, you know? So, yeah, you do a good job of recognizing that part. I think a lot of times, in our case, we don't do such a good job.
You know, I'm going to throw this out there. This is a little off subject, but it just made me think of it. I was talking to Dave at the gym yesterday, and he was listening to the podcast, and he lost his dad, and like 6 months ago, and he was listening to a clip from the podcast of me basically saying, hey, because someone asked what good comes from when someone dies, and he said, look, you covered a lot of stuff, and it was super powerful and was very helpful, and he said, but there's one more thing. He said, there's one more thing that has come from my dad's death that is good. And I said, what? And he said, it was like a slap in the face of go out and get after it, you know? And I kind of left that out. And I've talked to other people, and clearly, you know, when you lose someone that's close to you, See, I guess the reason that I didn't think of this is because in the teams, you kind of like you guys get killed, you know, and we all kind of already live with the feeling of, hey, man. I mean, I say it all the time. I'm going to live the best life I can. But for someone in the civilian sector, and they haven't had they haven't lost anyone. They haven't had anyone died close to them. They get the feeling that many people walk through the world with of, I'm going to live forever. You know, I'm not going to die. And I got all the time in the world I need. I got time. And so he made this great point. He said, you know, for me, when my dad died, he's in his mid-20s. And he's been kind of, you know, I don't want to say the word relaxing, but he's been, you know, fairly, cruising kind of. And he realized he can't do that. You know, he needs to get after it. So cool story, cool feedback. I thought I should let everybody know that's another good thing when if you lose someone and you're not accustomed to that and you don't see how precious life is, because a lot of times it's pretty easy to forget. It's pretty easy to forget how precious it is when it's right there, when it's given to you. You know, just like food. Yeah. It's pretty easy to forget. I mean, how precious was the crappy loaf of French bread with sticks and bugs in it that Colonel Reeder got when he got to the prison camp in Hanoi? Yeah. That was precious. And you know what? Even Colonel Reeder, 3 weeks later, he was like, "Oh, that bread." Even he's here, he's laughing. He's like, "That bread sucked." I was like, "Sir, here you said it was like the best thing you've ever had." He goes, "Well, it wasn't first." So we all get this attitude that, you know, hey, this is always going to be here. Well, it's not always going to be here. So don't treat it like it is.
Taking that for granted.
Yep.